Welcome. I'm Julie Nadell. I'm the president of the Society of American Graphic Artists. SAGA is over 100 years old. It's a nationwide printmaking organization. And we are leaving our office on Union Square probably at the end of this year. And we have a lot of records in the office, and we were deciding what to do with them. And it seemed to us to be important to preserve our history and to make these records available. Many of the records are old catalogs, lists of artists who have been in Saga, and a lot of material that talks to the history of printmaking in the United States. So to that end, we decided to digitize our documents. And this film is just discussing how we're preserving our history, a little bit of what our history is. Bill Benken is joining us. He'll be discussing some of the history of Saga. Merle Perlmutter, a longtime member of Saga, is here. Deanne Prozia, the vice president of Saga, and Diego Brisano is also here. He's doing the digitizing. So, Bill, could you talk to us about a little bit of Saga history?
SAGA really didn't begin entitled the Society of American Graphic Artists. That was much later in the mid-20th century. First in 1949, when they wanted to include more than etchers, which they had been doing for a long time, and they called themselves the American Society of Etchers, Woodcutters, Lithographers, Gravers, etc. And then by 1951, they decided to just shorten it to Society of American Graphic Artists. But all of this idea of having a group of artists getting together, and when I say artists, they were not necessarily primarily printmakers, but artists who, and this goes back really to France and England in the late 19th century, there was a revived interest in etching because it seemed so spontaneous as artists would draw, and did not require all of the technology that was needed to do lithography or wood engraving, etc. They had been very inspired. The Barbizon school of French etchers, like Theodore Rousseau and Corot, they loved the etching and the freedom of it. And so they began to do it. And fortunately, in Paris, there was a man named Alfred Cadart, Cadart, who was a master printer. And he was able to work with these artists and bring them together and created in French, it was a society of what they called aquafortistes, or using strong water, we would say acid, but it was a society of etchers. Alfred Cadart came to New York in 1886, and and to Philadelphia, where he demonstrated etching, and he brought a lot of his materials with him. And then they were made available in the city. And so artists, the first group to form, sort of, number of them, the Brooklyn Etchers Society, the New York Etchers Society. But finally, by 1915, it was Society of American Society of Etchers. But eventually, they allowed so many other media in that they recognized that they had to change their name. One of the things that I recognized when I did my research even years ago is that it became very inclusive of women as well. Women did etching as equally to men. So it's one of the first societies really that, along with the American Watercolor Society, that admitted women into it without any rebuttal. And so there were many. I mean, Mary Cassatt was invited when she was in our international shows. But by the mid-century, you had people like Isabel Bishop, and by the 40s and 50s, Reginald Marsh. Both of these artists also taught at the Art Students League. And many of our SAGA members were taught either at the National Academy or at the Art Students League, which were forerunners in teaching printmaking.
Merle, talk to us about what's going on in our office and all the files we have there. A lot of stuff?
Too much to contemplate, actually. Those files were filled with all our catalogs from the beginning, and with all the printed matter that we had for collector's prints, and all the important things, that shows and letters that went back and forth between SAGA and galleries, and to have shows. And there was in the files we found receipts for bills. There was a tremendous amount of artwork in the files that people had died and left their artwork with us. And so we spent a long time returning artwork, as Julie knows, because Julie was secretary at the time and had to contact all these people. And we've been slowly divesting of the things that aren't absolutely important. And we began to think of other ways to deal with all our materials. And Diego was kind enough to digitize everything, which takes all this printed matter and reduces it to almost nothing. So we're very grateful for that, because there's just reams and reams of material to go through.
It's interesting that we found out that there were so many women in the group, and we wouldn't know unless we're delving into our past and documenting it and looking at it and taking things out of the file drawers, which I think is wonderful because it's bringing it to life. Deanne, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I totally agree. I love history, so this was like a project made for me. And when I was working with Merle and trying to clean up the office a bit, it was amazing the stuff I was seeing. I couldn't believe it. We have letters from like John Taylor Arms, like hand signed letters from Gladys Mock and lots of impressive printmakers. So because of the pandemic, I took a bunch of the material home. I was able to go down there a couple times, and I got catalogs from 1937 on. And I thought, boy, there's no past members list. I was kind of looking around, and nobody seemed to have one. And so I started to go through each catalog, and any member of SAGA, I started putting on a list, and I ended up having over 800. I've also been posting it on Facebook. Every week I post something on Facebook about a past member. I'm learning so much about printmakers who weren't like recognized, or maybe they were at the time, but we've kind of forgotten about them. Like there was Glenn Elps, and he was coined the word and was credited with developing the colograph. I mean, and he was a SAGA member, right? And then C.W. Anderson, he did lithography, and he ended up doing a whole series, a book called Billy and Blaze, and they just made a movie about it. And these are members. As I was compiling the list, the woman from Art in Embassies called me from Washington, D.C., wanting to know if we had a certain member, if Wanda Miller Matthews was a member of SAGA. And it was so easy to just go to my list and see that she was indeed a past member. And I was able to do some research and get back to them.
Diego, can you talk to us a little about the process? Just give us a little overview of what you've been doing.
It's been very interesting. Making a catalog 70 years ago, it was completely different to what it is today. We are in a moment where there's so many tools available to digitize documents. So the process is very simple. I use very high quality pictures of each page of the catalogs, and then I put them together in a PDF file that goes to our archives section in SAGA's website. The very, very important part of all of this is making accessible this information to everyone that is interested on this legacy of printing in New York City. It's like there's so many artists that were also part of other organizations, and we are in a moment where people have limitations to go to places to see art and prints, because we are re-understanding our relationship with visual art and art in general.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This is helping us come into the 21st century by really preserving what is our past. So I think it's a great project. That's what this film is about, to give everyone a little taste of what's going on. And so I want to just thank everybody for being part of this for now. And we'll see. Maybe we're going to have more episodes in the future. But thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.